So we're at work plan updates then, 9-1?
Yes.
What is in committee session?
Okay, we are once again live.
If we have something
Okay,
to
we'll start the meeting again. And we'll start with 9.1 work plan updates. Take it away, Bert.
Okay, just give me one moment here. I just wanted to make sure I had recorded the time for our break. Thank you. Okay, so through to the next item then. I guess we didn't actually finalize a motion. So I would suggest that perhaps we do that knowing that we have Patricia, Kristen, they would be our two committee members, and possibly Shelley that would attend EDA. I'm thinking we may even want to just do the motion to accept as information, because I mean, we've made it, I think, evident through the budget that it's council's will to have members attend. So it may just be a motion to accept that as pardon me, to accept the discussion and the information on conferences.
We got it, Bert.
We can help.
Oh,
How about if I just make a motion that we direct administration to register committee members as per discussion?
that sounded much more eloquent than anything I was trying to say.
It was short. Bert, it was short.
Thanks, Alan.
Okay. Any questions on the motion? Okay, call the question. All in favor? So passed. Now, do we have to,
Thank you.
no, we don't need an information motion on that.
Okay, so into the work plan items so the information presented here, I can certainly give additional comments, but we do have some updates from the growth RETA. We did have a RETA meeting yesterday, so Councillor Kulkin may have some things he wants to contribute. The update is there on the Agricultural Chronicles. Thank you to everyone who's participating and being part of the Community Futures Ag Strategic Doing. We're moving along with that. The Fort Assiniboine Bicentennial, I'm attending meetings of that group. They were monthly. We've gone to every couple of weeks. We'll go back to monthly here into the new year. Those are, I've been attending the last couple of virtual to try and reduce my time footprint a little bit for the travel time. The Golden Triangle, and Councillor Judy, if there's anything that you have to add on that one, we certainly can, but the GT is pretty much all set. We're talking about some possible additional marketing coming up. And then the Northern Alberta Rockies Tourism Zone, we've touched on that a little bit. So if there's any further questions, I'm certainly willing to give more detail if needed.
Anybody have any questions on those?
Nope, I read through everything.
Right now.
That was great.
Yeah,
Could I just add a comment to here,
you might
Bert
answer.
or Bruce?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that is on the RETA radar now that we've got some funding available, we don't know whether it's sustainable or not, but what we're doing is we're entertaining the idea of hiring an admin person that would work in alignment with Bert and some of the other EDOs. And it may be a good idea for some of you who are a little bit more astute at this, but think about some creative ideas how we could blend what we do here in the County of Woodlands with our EDO, because the position would be very much similar. And so the idea that came out at the meeting was, how can we get the other municipalities participate, because right now Bert does the heavy lifting for all of that piece, and so we're trying to find a way that we can actually afford a person to put in an admin position, so it would be a part-time position maybe in 3 out of 3 different municipalities. So just give that a thought when you're thinking about our strategic direction, because it would definitely help the readout to have some ideas come from this, like an economic development committee, as to how they would see that play out.
Okay, Alan?
So this would be a question, I think, for you, Peter. With respect to that 140K, what I'm reading here is that it's basically earmarked for Wild Alberta projects. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is the tourism relief fund, but the new we're gonna get the new RETA funding for $125,000 in February, and right now we're in the process of figuring out exactly what that RETA is going to look like. But we know that we need to have a central admin person, but we really can't afford that completely on our own. But there's a possibility that it looks like we're looking at a administrative help for Bert, so that maybe we can line those two up a little bit. So I just think that it's a good idea for us as an economic development committee to understand that person would also be just like Bert would be a resource to us.
Go ahead, Alan.
So I guess what my question still is, and
The wild portion? The
no,
wild?
no. So I sat on that growth committee years ago, and we had an admin person all the way through that. And, the province changed their funding formulas, funding to RETAs were reduced, and Woodlands stepped in for that RETA in a big way by providing admin support. So the nature of that board is elected officials get together and chart a direction, but who does the work, right? It's not the elected officials. And so Bert did that, and I just don't know that that's fair to our municipality. If
That,
and
that's
so,
exactly you're 100% right, Al. That's exactly the conversation that I had yesterday at the table. I said, it's time that some of the other municipalities step up to the plate, because right now we're a working board and we have two members that do the admin work because that's the necessity. And Bert is the professional person that kind of directs the traffic there. And so we understand with the funding that we've been given that we have to go in that admin direction. So what we'd like to see is we would like to see the other municipalities understand that the contribution that they are going to put in may not necessarily go directly to Wild. It will go to the admin portion to advance the economic development piece that is so important. So we just want everyone to know that there's a good understanding that Woodlands has done the heavy lifting here, and we want to push in that direction. And the more ideas we get and creative ideas we get as to how we can do that, the better off we're going to be.
So this, I think this is a growth question, but what I'm hearing Peter ask is for us to help out with potential creative solutions to allow growth to operate from an admin point of view, but take that, as he says, heavy lifting off. And yeah, I how much of your work month on an average would be spent on growth? Would you say it's 10%?
No, I wouldn't be 10. I would say for growth meetings, telephone meetings, and some of the support stuff, I would say possibly 2 days a month. I would say between a day and a half.
Well, that's out of 20 days, that's 10%.
So 10%. There you go. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, well, I mean, we've done it because we wanted the RETA to survive, and it was by necessity. How many other municipalities are in growth, Peter?
Right now, there's Barhead County, Lac St. Anne, I believe, until March, because they've opted just into the wild program. And there'd be Swan Hills, Mayerthorpe, ourselves.
Wow.
And the process right now is we're in the process of asking the question, what in all of the municipalities, and I'm developing those relationships right now with Yellowhead, Big Lakes, Athabasca, Lesser Slave, to see if there's an appetite for them to come to these workshops so that we can begin to understand what it is that they see a Rural Economic Development Association can do for them regionally, because that's the only way this thing is going to work. Because if we're going to do economic development regionally, and Woodlands is going to be the one that foots the bill for it, I don't see why we don't just get out of that.
Yeah.
And because right now we're just leveraging provincial dollars because the RETA is a nonprofit. So we're able to leverage provincial dollars to, push that agenda. But if we can't get any, if the other municipalities don't see any value in it, then we're going to have to go a different path. So this 1 year funding, we want to make sure that we deliver a model that has value to all of these different municipalities so that they'll join. And I believe, Bert, we were looking at 10 that we know of which some have already asked the question, like, we're interested. So right now, it's those 4. We don't know whether Barhead is going to stay on. We have a good member there right now who's phenomenal in Walter Purchas. The County of Lac St. Anne has a different view, and which is fine. They want to just contribute to wild, and they'll do that on whatever terms they want to do that. That'll have nothing to do with growth. So down the road, we're going to be looking at potentially having another 4 or 5 people join if we can show that there's some value in it.
What's the per capita funding that comes from the municipality to the growth RETA? Is it 50 cents per capita?
No, I think it's $1.50, Bert, isn't it, or $1.60?
I believe we're up to, I think it was either $1.25 to $1.50.
Wow.
With a cap of 10,000. So the women's contribution this year was just over 8,000.
Right. Plus your time.
Correct.
Yeah.
So just off the top, Peter, just for brainstorming, what I would suggest is that you use that 10% of Bert's time as a metric when you ask for funding from municipalities. And if it's not in kind, if EDOs can't spend as much of their time as Bruce is, then to me, the municipality has to be aware that there's admin cost.
Yeah.
Okay, Christian, do you know what growth RETA and wild is?
I do not know what they do, and I was like,
Yes.
wow, we spend a lot of money on them.
Bert, can you do a,
Yes, so we have the meeting package from yesterday. I'll send that around for everybody to take a look at, because that's probably one of the best ways to give everybody the immediate snapshot. The growth RETA, though, there are 13 regional economic development alliances within Alberta. Growth RETA is ours, and we have the sub-brand of Wild Alberta Tourism, because tourism has always been one of the main focuses for us on the regional model. The official name is actually the Grizzly Regional Economic Development Alliance, but we've used the working title of Growth Alberta, and rebranding is something around the name that may come forward within the near future. In the past, we have had as many as about a dozen or so municipalities that have been part of growth. We are looking for a new path forward. We have received, we actually received about $50,000 per year for the last 2 years from the province to help with the operating costs of growth. What Councillor Kuchen has been discussing is the $125,000 from the province, which will be the 2023 portion. And that actually isn't due to be paid to us until April, but they've told us that we likely will have that sometime in February. And so out of that out of that tranche of funds, as well as the existing roughly $100,000 we have on account with growth, what they're looking at doing is hiring some kind of an executive director / admin support, which we always have had up until coming into 2020. Our executive director, who had been there for 10 years, left to go to another opportunity. And we did have an interim person that came in, and they worked for a couple of months, but really since the fall of 2020, as has been mentioned, it's been a board-driven kind of thing. So Mayor Jabush from Mayorthorpe, who is the chair, she's been compiling all of the agenda packages, attending all of the provincial meetings, doing all of the liaising, ensuring that all of that heavy part of it is done. I've been there in a bit of a support role on some of those things. In the past, we had scheduled meetings and everything with growth. We haven't met for the last 3 months. I think, Peter, what did we say? End of September was our last meeting for growth?
Yeah.
And then on Sunday afternoon, we received an email saying, hey, can we please meet Monday at 1 o'clock? And so yesterday at 1 o'clock, Councillor Copeland and myself were at a 5-person growth reader meeting in the Mayorthorpe office yesterday. So that's kind of where it's at.
What's the mandate for it though?
For municipalities to work together on regional economic development items.
Okay.
So healthcare, for example, in the past, broadband and the internet access, those have all been bigger projects that growth has addressed. Looking at new industry formation, we actually were part of a provincial study on the hemp industry going back in within recent memory. So that's all sort of some key initiatives from the last couple of years. Going into the deeper past, we've had Growth Business Awards. We've done a regional conference or regional meeting, and Councillor Dean, when he was on council before, was a huge part of some of those things back in the glory days.
Of growth, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So, and not to do a history lesson, but growth, the concept of growth came from declining school population in Barrhead. And so the 2 school divisions were like, how can we sustain our base? We need to attract people to the area, families and children, etc. So that was the reason for being. Out of that was this whole evolution. The Job Expo that currently is held at the Miller Center, that was one of the 3 pillars that growth had. So they had a Job Expo that they typically held in Westlock or Barrhead. They had a business awards recognition, so it was like a regional chamber of commerce. And the budget for that awards night was huge, like on the order of $70,000, $80,000. And the third one was Wild Alberta. And Wild Alberta has kind of morphed to stand on its own 2 feet, just as a tourism thing. So I guess my question is, there's $100,000 in the bank, and there's been $50,000 coming from the government for the past 2 years.
And we received both of those tranches just within the last few months. That's what leads to the $100,000 balance.
Oh, okay.
Is because that has just come in, and we haven't had an admin person, so they haven't had that overhead and those expenses.
So what my question was going to be is there was funding that came from municipalities, right? There was 4 or 5 municipalities
Yes.
at $1.50 a head. So what was that money spent on, other than meetings?
We can give you a full accounting. We actually have the booking or the
Right, but high level, what were the couple things that happened?
part of it was operations. I think one of the pain points that Ritas have had in general has been that a large majority of their funding is spent on retaining and keeping members. And so that was a lot of Troy's activity, was to make sure things didn't get any smaller. But that said, they do have provincial meetings. Of the 13 is they get together in person at least twice a year, and then there are monthly meetings. And one of the things that Mayor Jabush has been attending on behalf of the RETA part of it. The other part of it was we have had some dedicated expenses. Wild is still part of growth. It is not its own separate entity. It does have a separate set of bank accounts, though, that we're moving to under the TRF. But some of that initial funding and everything that's gone into Wild, there's been some expenses there for
Sorry,
this year
just
as
to
well.
jump in, like, you've answered my question, like, so you guys can see, and Peter, don't take this as criticism, this is not directed to you or the growth board, but just for us as objective committee members and councillors, you know, we have to decide whether that expenditure is bringing value back. And so, you know, 90% of the funding went to sending people to meetings.
I wouldn't quite say 90, because we have had the Open Farm Days participation. All of that had kind of started under growth with recent years as well. We did bring in one of the vice presidents from the CRTC to talk about broadband. That was a meeting that we had in it was late 19, early 2020. So there have certainly been, I think, some other significant things that growth has done as well, but it has been very much struggling for survival the last 2 years especially.
Well, and
Okay,
may,
actually,
may,
Patricia's
may I
comment.
may I add into this, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, first of all, I don't disagree with you, Al, on, for me, it was a questionable thing as well, as to how this whole thing worked. But what what you have to understand is, for the $10,000 that we put in, we probably in the last year have leveraged $150,000, or well, probably more, because the RETA exists. We've got $200,000. So the portion that's being spent on Wild, I would suggest definitely has been and is going to be huge value to the municipality because of the way that it's set up. And the other part of it is this understanding of what the RETA actually needs to do. And one of the things that we learned in the site link is that the big projects, the big industrial projects will land wherever those investment choices are going to be made. And then that municipality can only, be sure that they remove the roadblocks. But the problem that we have is that we're so small in all of our municipalities that we need a regional base of data to understand where some of those resources that these companies are going to need can be sourced. So the value is going to come if we set it up properly. Right now, that's the process I believe that we're going through in this. So, from what it was 10 years ago to now has been so fluid because everything has changed so rapidly, both on the dollar side and on what the demand is going to be for economic development, that I see that these economic development committees, the RETAs, and the municipality's strategy for economic development have to line up in order for us to be successful in both landing these bigger projects and developing the smaller projects that are so important for the social economic piece. So, yeah, you can't really measure what we as a municipality are getting out of that $10,000 that we currently put in there, but I think we're going to be able to measure it fairly quickly.
Patricia.
I just wanted to kind of pop into this and clarify a few things for myself and maybe summarize, but ultimately, I see the RETA as an absolute tool that we must have. And my concern is that looking at these other municipalities that have now dropped off. I can appreciate, based on this discussion, why they have, because the conversation then becomes money's been tight everywhere. And if they don't have an admin and they don't have this, what bang for their buck are they getting? So part of my concern would be, what can we do as a committee to support this organization going back and feeding some energy into that to attract these other stakeholders back to the table? Because as an organization, we need to have this opportunity to work together with other municipalities so that we can negotiate as a region and that we can be getting this government funding and so on. Just a sec. And then when I hear of what you had mentioned about starting, you know, in the beginning, it was school and population and, you know, it was about increasing the population growth of the area and supporting the entire area. One of the things that I'm seeing as a theme and in a lot of the conversations that we have and hearing about how wild was a big part of it. And I do know with the new economic plan that the government has come out with and so on, saying that, was it 100 billion in tourism in 10 years, something, 10 billion?
10 billion.
10 billion, sorry.
In 10 years, yes.
And which that's great, but in Woodlands County, I think it's really important, and in our region, yes, we have some focus on tourism, but I'm wondering, is part of this concern been that they went from, I'm gonna say, a lofty goal of increasing the population and supporting the entire area to too much energy potentially being put on tourism? You know, and if we're gonna support our businesses and if we're gonna have meaningful economic development, we need to get out of this conversation of 80% of the effort being put on tourism. We need 10% of the effort on tourism, 80 or 90% put on meaningful business development that is going to be in the agri-food sector, that is going to be in manufacturing. And I think that we need to be taking that kind of an energy to a growth RETA and involving them, for example, in the agri-food. So with what you guys have mentioned, with this opportunity for them to have a part-time admin, then maybe it's a good reason to bring this back to the people that are no longer at the table and say, we have this potential to have an administrative person. What's it going to take to get these stakeholders back? And how do we come back together as a region? And what can we do at this table in this committee to support that happening?
Okay, and a quick comment to that is that we need you to come to one of those workshops that is being prepared for us right now, and I believe those are going to proceed in February at some point in time, right, Bert? I can't remember the exact dates.
Correct.
But you're 100% right. We understand completely that tourism is the low-hanging fruit. It's the easy one to actually attach some movement and you can see something happening in. The other ones are much more difficult. So these workshops are going to identify that, and once we have a clear direction there, then the municipalities that see value in what that platform looks like are going to join, and then you can actually have an admin person. So all of the ideas that you have here need to come to those workshops, because we need to identify those and say these are important things that are of not just Woodlands important, but regional importance, and then you're going to get buy-in.
Alan?
Yeah, Peter basically said what I was going to say. The concept of a regional board, yeah, of course it makes sense. You know, you want to leverage that sort of thing. The difficulty with this, it's no different than our committee here, is, you know, we're trying to find what our key objectives are, right? Mm-hmm. And so are they, and that's an evolving process. Now, of course, when they only had Bert to do that admin work, a lot of stuff falls through the cracks, right? So the admin person is going to help without question, and Peter and I have talked about this a few times in the past, what our growth board would do. Primarily it was just me as chair, but I would sometimes, you know, the person that from a council that was maybe looking over the fence at growth, I would go to their council meeting. I'd be, make a presentation at their council meeting and answer their questions, and there's a lot of skepticism, but there's also a lot of, can you do this, can you do that? And that fuels the information coming back. But it's a hard sell, Peter. I don't envy you guys, because council is gonna say, show me the money. And how do you do that, right? Agri-food is kind of sort of new, that's and it's definitely doable. Microbreweries, all these things that are doable on a small scale that we can actually help with, right?
Exactly.
Well, and I guess my final comment to that is that in order for us to be successful here, we have to build those relationships with councils who, unfortunately don't have the professional people at the table like we do. Like we have Bert, Mayor Thorpe has Sherry, Barhead, Jenny does some of the work there, but very little. So a lot of these municipalities don't have EDOs that can say, hey, you know what, this is important. And that is our struggle right now. A lot of the councillors think they know economic development, and I can tell you is that in the year that I've been involved in it, I still don't know how that's all gonna. I just understand that we have to really work hard on convincing some of these councils that they need to be involved in order for them to, sustain their municipalities.
One more.
I just wanted to pop in quick and say on that, Peter, as well, definitely I recognize when I've heard you talk about it, you really seem to have a passion for the organization, and I know Janet does as well. I know Burke puts a ton of time into it, and it sounds like between the three or maybe four of you, that you guys are doing 90, you're definitely steering and driving the ship all the time. So it is something that if there is anything I can do to help support that organization, I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, thank you very much. That would be appreciated.
Okay, with that, is there any other comments on the rest of the topics?
I can make a motion that we accept the work plan updates as info.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Any questions on the motion? Call the question, all in favor? And that is passed. Next is blue sky discussion. Over to you, Bert.
Okay, just give me 1 second. I'm just taking some notes here so I'm caught up. Okay. Okay, to blue sky. The blue sky item that's there is one incredibly exciting announcement that we received going back a couple months ago, I believe now. But we have a company by the name of Vault 4401 working with their partner Moraine Initiatives. They have had approval under the provincial carbon licensing program for an exploration license for a very large potential carbon hub entirely within Woodlands County. And so we are in regular contact with both Vault 4401 and with Moraine. And I'm happy to say that they are on what they call their second phase of their, not geothermal, seismic. They're doing their second phase of their seismic testing at the moment within our area. And they are working through the exploration of the area as per the parameters that are indicated within their license and all of that. And if all goes well, we'll have further good news updates from them the beginning of next year. What is incredibly exciting about Vault 4401 is their concept for their carbon vault. Of the 23 projects that have had licenses approved within the province, some are for solely one emitter, where they would only be able to take on the carbon load from one specific project. This is what they call an open source multi-emitter carbon hub. And so there is the potential for this project to take in carbon from a wide variety of sources, some that are existing and some that may end up developing. So that's where it's incredibly exciting for us, is the legislation and everything around carbon licensing and carbon trading and all of that further delineates itself and confines how companies can do things. This is one of those things that's going to create some incredible opportunities, and carbon trading and that sort of thing is coming more and more to the fore. So yeah, it's going to be incredibly exciting to see how this company develops within our region.
Patricia?
Do we have any idea yet of what a potential vision is on how this is going to impact the county financially as far as jobs or tax base?
So very initial. It has a small above ground footprint. So it would likely go into an area roughly the size of what an existing oil battery or battery pad kind of thing would be.
Okay.
So I'm going to say it would have probably a minimal effect on our county tax base, just with what the above ground imprint would be, with what would fall within the confines of what would be there for county taxation. But in regards to the job part of it, they've said it could be as many as 30 to 40 jobs in the long term for management of the hub. In the short term, it may be a little bit more of that, as we would see with a lot of other projects as they're under development and that sort of thing. So again, very kind of preliminary. And really what they're looking at is testing in 22 and 23. If all goes well, hopefully being operational in 24.
Nice.
What this also does is if we get this in our area, it opens up, like, some of the mills might contribute to it, so they'll be expanding their mill to be able to process the carbon to them, so it's the start.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if we have an opportunity for a local carbon network, this is the essential element that you need to be able to fuel that.
Any more comments on the blue sky discussion?
Do you want a motion to accept this info?
Please.
I think Kristen made that motion, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yep, I
I
did.
believe I saw her hand up.
It was up. I move to adopt.
So we have a motion on the floor. Any questions on it? And I'll call the question, all in favor? No, it's still passed.
You'll find, Kristen, that when we have everybody here in person, it's that side of the room versus that side.
Yeah, look at this.
I wonder why it's called.
You're
And I think
over
you're ahead.
there.
Peter and Crystal are here, right? Like, this is Peter.
Oh, I see him up there.
All right.
We're gonna get Shelley over on this side too, you wait.
To the dark side.
Only for you non-game.
Well, we literally have the light behind us.
For real. We're almost angelic.
The force is strong with that one.
So,
Information.
I would argue the force is strong within all of it.
Bert, the information items.
All right, very
It's a
good, thank
company
you.
sky.
So
The two companies
our
that
standard reports and updates are there. Certainly, it seems to be relatively good news for the economy overall with the way that things are developing. There was two absolutely wonderful articles that were in the Woodlands Express, and so I wanted to make sure that we had copied and included those. So there is an update there from the Lee family, who they used to operate the convenience store at Blue Ridge, and unfortunately they don't have any plans to reopen, but there's a bit of a summary of their situation and that part of things. And then in regards to Blue Ridge Farm, they are still doing some on-farm sales, but the Blue Ridge Farm Store will be closing. I believe she's actually closed now. I think her last date was end of October. But they do still have meat sales and that sort of thing available. And it's one of those things where it's a growing family situation, and excellent news for us for population growth within the county. But it's certainly, we know there's that life and work family balance. So those were some of the things there. The comparative information from another municipality. Strathcona County is widely seen as being a very well-resourced municipality when it comes to their economic development staff. I believe currently they have a staff of 7 just within their economic development part of things, and that includes actually having a full-time development person who's part and parcel. So to aim incredibly high and put a comparison in there from Strathcona County, that was the link to their year-end statement. And then now I'll skip back to what we've been talking about earlier today, that economic development rural Alberta action plan. So it did come out last week. The plan itself is included. The links to where the plan is on the webpage are included. I'm certain that at upcoming events for RMA and for other things, we will begin to hear more feedback and more comments. But if this plan is, as I understand it to be, this is the roadmap for the majority of provincial government expenditure within rural for the next 5 years. So alignment with the plan, understanding the 5 key strategic areas of the plan. I think that all of those things and finding areas where these things align with the priorities that we've set or are going to set, as Ellen has said, Councillor Dean, I think you stated it very well. That is the path to where some of the provincial government funding likely will be. So those are the information items.
Tricia?
It just brought to mind one quick thing I wanted to mention and kind of hopefully take that idea into a brainstorming session going forward. But when I think about the store in Blue Ridge and with what's happening, and the announcement that they're not going to rebuild and so on, which completely understandable for the family, like they've been through a lot. But in looking at things like Blue Ridge growing, like with the subdivision and in an area like that, or it could be Fort Assiniboine, or it could be other areas, when they're losing a key part of what makes, the center of a community. From an ECDEV perspective, it's something that I'd like to plant a seed in people's mind, bringing forward to what can we do to identify what are key businesses in a hamlet, and is there something from economic development that we can do, such as applying for a tax relief or something for new businesses for X amount of time coming into an area. And just kind of throwing that out there, being spawned from that idea there to bring into strategy sessions in the future. Because I think that we need to have a planning session for building communities. And I don't mean if somebody's going to bring in 4 convenience stores, obviously that shouldn't, I don't think that should qualify for a tax break. But if we're looking to specifically attract a business to support our residents, to keep our population, then I think that's something that we need to be looking at. Sorry.
Well, and I don't disagree with you at all, Patricia. I think that the tax break to a certain degree for those small commercial ventures aren't going to be as effective as if we can find a way to incentivize, investment in our local communities. I'm in conversation right now with a lady who would like to, start a storefront, and I know the dynamics in Fort Assiniboine are right now that we have a store that has a person that would like to retire, and he's not going to be able to sell it very well because there's no real interest in it. So there's some conversations now that are starting about how do we make that a community store that could be a cooperative venture between local producers and a management team. It's all up in the air right now, but I think the small towns like Blue Ridge, Fort Assiniboine, these small areas could really benefit from that if we can get the supply chain of local producers all sort of on the same page to figure out how that's going to happen. So it's a conversation that's starting now. I don't really know where it's going to go, but I think there's huge potential. And you're 100% right. That's what's going to create some serious economic development that goes out from those communities.
So would we not put that under, like, under a strategic development plan and tourism? Would that not be under point 1? So that could be part of our,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Definitely.
Is that in the minutes?
I haven't put it in as an excellent example, and I encourage you to submit that, and I'll make sure we have it
You
there.
have to remember and you have to submit that.
Yes.
But,
Jeez.
so, my comment, and again, this is a history lesson, but Peter and Crystal, having lived in that Fort Assiniboine area, the county has been asked to participate in a variety of ways to try and attract business. And unfortunately, it just hasn't been successful. There's effort that's gone into it, but the fact of the matter is it has not resulted in business attraction. And that's the million dollar question is it a tax break? What is it? And people are not going to set up a business in a location if they don't think they're going to make money.
Absolutely.
And so, how do we help convince them that they can make money in a place, right? But Peter's idea of a cooperative, if that could be a nonprofit, then maybe we can qualify for grants, and it could be a different way to look at it.
Are these in the minutes?
One more quick thing that I'll throw in there, and just again with the cooperative, and I've mentioned this to a few people, and I am on the agri-food through Community Futures, that board now as well. But I would really highly encourage one area to check out online is the Pan Cape Breton Food Hub. And what they've done, it's a cooperative organization that started basically just with an idea of connecting producers to consumers. And it is now morphed into, they now have delivery. You can go online, you order your food once a week. They have corporate sponsorships where you can sponsor senior meals. They have competitions with restaurants where the restaurants supply the local food, and you can go into, for example, one of our local restaurants and order a steak from Blue Ridge Farms or, wherever it is, and it's all advertised. It's called the Pan Cape Breton Food Hub, and it serves the entirety of the island.
Oh, okay, so it's in Cape Breton.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if you go on their website, and you'll see basically all the links, how they've linked to distribution, education. You can go on there and learn how to cut a chicken so that you're not, missing waste or whatever. So it's just there's other areas that I'm looking into to try to find similar examples. But I really think ECDEV, agri-food, community support, I see that as a hub that can completely go in this whole region. And it could be something that could tie the RITA and give it a purpose, and our agricultural boards, and give a market to this. So, sorry.
I was just gonna say one thing before that.
Yeah.
I have a comment on that as well, Patricia, and this is
You're out of
just
order.
very quick. The consultants that we've hired to work with us on this RITA plan currently are working on a project. It's called Connect for Food, which connects the urban to the rural. So all of the pieces are starting to fall in place. It's just how we massage that to make it, valuable is what's going to be key.
Absolutely. I've looked up Connect for Food and checked out all their information, and that looks like how the Pan Cape Breton Hub started. So that was kind of where it was tying into. It's a very similar idea. Awesome. Sorry, Bruce.
No problem. For instance, with the Blue Ridge store, you go back 15 years ago, the people that owned the store had the post office in it. They had
Yeah.
Treasury Branch Bank in it.
Yeah.
And over the years with different owners, that all disappeared. To have just a convenience store
Yeah.
cannot survive with the population base around there. There has to be more to that establishment than just one item. There has to be more draws to it to sustain the business. Like, for instance, now, somebody to go in there and start a store, you gotta buy the land, they want $100,000 for the land there. It'll be $1 million to build a building.
Yeah.
On what they're gonna make selling, pop and chocolate bars, you can't sustain it. So there has to be more to this. And, that's something maybe we can work at to come up with something, but, the store is greatly missed in Blue Ridge, but
It's not
it was a
sustainable.
convenience,
Yes.
so.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I think Krista has a question, but I was gonna just move to accept the information items unless there's more discussion.
Kristen, did you have anything?
Oh, no, I just like the idea of doing some, not learning, but research into what core businesses we could do, are essential for running a hamlet, essentially. Like, I like that prospect, but do we do research individually? Do we send research back to our admin?
Well, either. It's, honestly, sorry, I'm kind of out of order here. You're asking me the question.
I'm asking whoever.
So, my experience of being on boards is if you don't utilize the strength of the people, they feel like they have no reason for being there.
Right.
And everybody here, there's 7 of us, we all have individual strengths and we all have, we look at things from a different perspective. Even the same document, we would look at it differently. And so if there's something that strikes your eye, by all means, that's what information items is all about. And if there's something that you think the committee really should see, send it to Bert and say, is there an opportunity for next meeting? Do we have time? We don't want a meeting that's 12 hours long.
Yeah.
But if there's something that you think really has value, certainly send it, do some research and send it to Bert.
Just the same as a council agenda, this is your agenda.
Right.
So, I mean, it's, I work with our chair to put it together, but adding and changing items and changing formats, we can adapt to whatever form the council or the committee would like to see. And, as a recent example, Patricia, your report that you had shared with us in regards to attending the ministry dinner, that was spectacular. So it is an opportunity to take advantage of, as Councillor Dean has said, everybody's strengths. And we can include whatever you guys would like to include.
Did you have something, Kristen?
No, I'm good.
So I did make that motion.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I just love the direction this board is taking from where it was 6 years ago. I'm so happy that everybody's on board with this, and I think we're going to do some fantastic work here. So thank you for all your participation in getting this done. With that, you can make a motion.
Yeah, so I'd make a motion that we accept the information items as information. And I will also want to, we're gonna be done, so I can't say this. This timeframe of, 2.5 hours is for me, that's exactly where we want to be, where, you know, we all have a schedule to go to, and we got lots accomplished here. So I appreciate the brevity, if you will, but, and yet, we got our stuff done. So my motion's on the table.
Any questions on the motion?
I agree.
Call the question, all in favor? That's passed. There's only one more motion we need.
I'll make that motion that we adjourn.
All in favor? So passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter and Crystal.
Yeah, thanks a lot, you
Well,
guys.
you wave
It was
over
a
there,
good-
but they're.
good
Yeah,
day.
I don't know where they are.
Thank you,
If I don't
seasons,
see any of
greetings,
you
and
again,
happy
have
new
a
year,
very Merry
everyone.
Christmas. I'll be seeing the counselors again, but the rest of you, it's been great. Thank you.
And if Shelley's still
Mer-
watching, can't wait to meet you.
Absolutely. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. So what do you do?
Oh, actually,
Here's the package.
for the last 15 years, I have been running e-tech and industrial extraction.
Give me one second.